Hello, everybody. I am the proactive caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. Today, I want to talk to you about the invisible caregiver in terms of multi-diverse cultural. There are so many caregivers out there that are barely acknowledging that they are no longer just sons and daughters or spouses fulfilling vows. There's even the family and relatives that are showing up to help when others can't or won't. So, what happens to the countless caregivers that are experiencing problems because there's a language barrier? Our Hispanic and Latino community doesn't seem to be serviced as well because of these issues. It's already so challenging to find other resources for caregivers, but then you add in some of these other issues as well with the barriers and the multicultural diversity issues. So, how do we find resources? That's why today I invited a friend and colleague from Caregiving Café, Lynn Greenblatt, to join me because she is a fierce supporter of the multicultural diversity caregivers. Thanks for coming on with me today, Lynn.
Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, one of the conversations we've had before is that caregiving is not an age, but it's a role. So, I'm curious to know, when did you start encouraging, or when were you encouraged to start being in that kind of a role?
Well, initially, there was no real caregiving role in my family as a child, although we did have a couple of family members who did need care. So this was probably in the 60s where family just cared for family members. And uh, we just visited our loved ones who were quite aged, probably 80s, 90s. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, definitely elder, and but very much loved. So it was a part of what we did as a family. We went to visit them. So that was just part of growing up, part of being a family. But if you fast forward to my actual caregiving role,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see myself as a family caregiver. Well, we were helping dad when he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in December of 2007. I do believe my brother and sister, my mom, all family, and myself, we were just family.
Right.
But once my husband was diagnosed the following year in 2008, that's when I really started to see myself as a family caregiver because
Mm.
I came across that term so many times while looking for information and resources to help my dad in Maryland while I was here in Austin. We relied on email quite a bit. Thank
Mm-hmm.
goodness for that technology. And I kept seeing caregiver. And even then, I didn't see myself as a caregiver. I thought they meant agencies,
Right. Oh, yes.
agencies, right? So, and then I realized a light bulb went on. Oh, wait a minute. I'm doing all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is when I first identified as a family caregiver. It took me a few months, Well, I got the message, and then I discovered that all these, like millions of family caregivers were out there too. At the time, it was just over 40 million caregivers, and this was in 2011.
Right.
Number nowadays that's going around is about 53 million family
Yes.
caregivers in
And
the United States
growing.
alone, right? So, so that's when I started identifying as such. And it, as much as it's good to know what you are, what you're identifying with, now I'm starting to wonder which is more important, to know that you're a family caregiver or just to have the access to the resources,
Right.
regardless of what you call yourself. So um, I think there's a slight change of heart for me right now,
Hmm.
but I still call myself a family caregiver so that I can
Absolutely.
find that caregiving resources.
Right, right. Because
Right,
I'm sure at some point, as you're stepping into that role to care for your spouse, you still have children, right?
right.
So,
Grown children. So, but nevertheless, my role of a mother or a sister or at the daughter while my mother was still alive
hmm,
or a wife, those or a friend, they don't go away.
no.
We're now juggling another very complex role, that of a family caregiver, on top of, not that mothering is really easy. I mean, I found it like, where's the manual for this, right?
Right.
So um, that's the way it is for caregiving. There is no such thing. There are a lot of resources out there and classes and support groups and things that help us, but they're not always accessible because we don't always know about them.
Exactly.
Yes, it's a whole new role.
So, as you're adapting to your role, did you experience any problems with the multicultural? Like, were you, as you cared for your father and or mother, were you looking for any kind of Spanish speaking services, or was that ever a problem for you?
No, I've been bilingual since birth. So I went to the American school. We had half a day of English, half a day of Spanish, and
Nice.
we always spoke both languages. So it wasn't a problem for me. However, I have attended several like resource fairs
Mm-hmm.
where it is a problem. I actually went to my first one. I had my own table, and all my resources were, of course, in English.
I
Well,
see.
all the people that came to my table spoke Spanish, very
Interesting.
little English. So I found myself speaking to them in Spanish and giving them English language resources and translating what they are. But you know what? The common thing in both languages are the numbers.
Right.
So I just said, look at this index. You can call these numbers, and they could figure out what they were, for the most part. But that is when I first came across this real barrier of the language. And of course, that's just Spanish, but we have people from Korea, from Vietnam, from China,
Right.
from India, from all over the place. Austin is very cosmopolitan. You know,
Absolutely.
so I have seen Social Security has all these languages. Area Agency on Aging and other organizations do have various languages or their literature in various languages. But like I said, for me, it wasn't a problem, but I could see that it was a problem for other families.
Right. Especially when these other families are like in the situations we've been in before. Until they recognize themselves as caregivers, they don't even see that those resources that are out there are for them,
Exactly.
that they can
Yes.
actually approach that. But I understand it's kind of hard when there, if there is a language barrier, to approach and figure out what's actually available for them.
Right, right. Yes. So, and even though it's only a word, it's a label, really. But it's helpful when you see that the resources are targeting family caregivers. then if you identify as one, then you, oh, that's for me. But otherwise, you'll miss the boat the way I did at the beginning. And then when I realized, I started amassing loads of resources, and I decided I needed to share these because nobody came forward to offer me any information, any help, any guidance, any
Exactly.
resources. So I decided I would do that, even if it was only for one person.
Right, right. And
No.
that's usually how caregivers learn. We learn from each other because we become resources ourselves for
Mm-hmm.
others. So
Yes.
as you were finding these resources and gathering all the information, we had a conversation earlier about finding more easily resources that are available that we didn't even know existed. Like our
Mm-hmm.
local services that are the phone numbers that I grew up with at one point for 411 of information, for example, and 911 for emergencies. But I didn't realize that there were other ones. How do you get that information out for caregivers?
Right, exactly. And that is the question, the $1 million question. Um, if it were completely up to me, um, I I don't use social media a whole lot. I did earlier on, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not so busy. But that's one way to get that information out. And just because I don't do it as much doesn't mean that millions of other people globally don't. I mean, they definitely do. So that would be one way. But also, if all doctors' offices had some like brochure or a
Right.
flyer or a card that said, you know, if you are taking care of a loved one, if you are a family caregiver, you can contact any of these resources when you're starting out your caregiving journey, or even if you're in the middle of it or at the end, it doesn't matter because there are caregivers who have never heard of a lot of resources that you and I have known about for several years.
Right.
And yet they've never heard of some of the resources I've mentioned. And I thought, oh my gosh, but I had never heard of them until I started doing my searches. So
Absolutely.
if I decided that all family caregivers visit doctors' offices, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
their own, but their loved ones.
Right.
And sometimes many doctors' offices, because very seldom have I heard any caregiver say, oh, this is the only condition, this is the only diagnosis. There's
Exactly.
often neuropathy, diabetes, heart issues,
Right.
kidney, all these others. So you're going to at least, hopefully, in addition to a GP, you're going to all the others, even a dentist. You know,
Exactly.
they would have just a little bit of information out there. I'm willing to bet my husband's car that we would reach more people.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the interesting thing is that we get to a point that we find the resources we need and it becomes our basic knowledge. And I don't realize it until I meet another caregiver who is at the beginning stages and they're asking the same questions I did years ago
Mm-hmm.
and realizing, wow, that this information is still very valuable and they need it now. But where do they
Mm-hmm.
find it?
And you know what? You mentioned that caregivers become resources themselves. I
Yes.
completely agree. We can tell other families about the resources. That would be another way to spread the word about these resources, which means that we as caregivers need to talk more about our caregiving, not necessarily um, that's the only thing we talk about,
Right.
but just to bring it up kind of as a matter of fact kind of way because it's part of our everyday life. And again, not to dwell on it. And I mean, I've heard of said, and I did the same thing. New moms, all we talk about is our little baby,
Right.
right?
Of course.
Because we're so proud and happy and all that, and because that's all we do.
Yeah, your
Uh,
life becomes that.
but yeah. So, but now caregiving is a natural occurrence in every single family, so why don't we deal with it as
Right.
such,
Right.
right? So if we could just be more forthcoming and talking about caregiving, there are a lot of good sides about caregiving. Not It's not all depressing,
Of course.
and just mention it casually. And you could mention, some of the resources that we know about. So,
So we have an opportunity coming up in a year or less than a year to be able to take some of these issues to the Capitol. And I started doing this before. Instead of venting, I started doing the I wish list. I wish if we had an opportunity, we could change XYZ. So if you have an opportunity to make a difference, especially in the Hispanic and Latino culture, what would you want to have changed?
where should I start?
I
Along
know, right? It's a list.
Yeah. I like to bring issues into the limelight to try to do something about them,
Right.
not to just complain. I really don't like to complain, but I don't mind pointing out deficiencies. I don't mind pointing out um, things that could be more um, efficient and practical and efficacious. So, and I think caregivers would do so much better, not only handling everything that we need to handle, including our own wellness and including emotional wellness, but getting tasks and responsibilities taken care of. So, first, I would approach the American Medical Association, the American Dental Association, all associations that where doctors are members,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to them to collaborate in putting resources out in their office. So, like I said before, I know it's a little bit extra work, but you know what? We all have extra work,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Caregivers, a whole lot more extra work for
Yeah.
which we were never trained. Okay, so
Right.
to me, that extra service is huge, and that's what I call the cherry on top. If all businesses, if all groups that are involved in healthcare and caregiving would go that little bit of extra half mile, it would go so much farther. So that was one thing. The other thing would be to talk to insurance companies
Mm-hmm.
and including Medicare to see if they could cover home care, because home health is generally covered, even if it's not fully covered, but up to some percentage.
Right.
But home care isn't, only under very specific circumstances. It's kind of like when you finish paying off a new car or the
Yes.
warranty ends, the next day is when you have problems, right?
Exactly.
So if you look at home care agencies' rates right now, I have heard anywhere from 30 to $40 per hour,
I know.
right? So I can't afford that. A
No.
lot of people that I know through Caregiving Cafe cannot afford that. Some can, and wonderful, but
Right.
most of
Right.
them cannot. And those who cannot do not qualify for the lower income benefits or services. We don't qualify for Medicaid. So we're up a creek.
Right.
Any of
Right.
those low income services for which many families can qualify, that's wonderful. But those of us that are above that are left out of that circle of support.
Right.
And I find that unfair.
It is very
I know
unfair.
life is unfair, but I don't know. I think that every family deserves the same opportunity to receive services when services are needed.
Yes, I agree.
So that's another thing. And I know it's like moving mountains, but you know what? Mountains can be moved if you have enough
Yes.
people behind this
Yes.
effort.
And that I like that you put it
Coordinate.
this way. because this is where not only are these services not covered by insurance, um, if they are covered, they're going off of gross income in many cases for the family versus their net disposable, what's available.
Right.
And
Right.
which it
That
feels like in that sense and alone, it eliminates so many caregivers because they may make enough to get by, but they don't make enough to get by with home expenses and add on caregiving expenses as well.
right. And then if you put a cost on the wellness of the family caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
and he
Exactly.
or she is not doing well because of the stress, because of the lack of sleep, because of not eating properly, not exercising, not walking because there's no time. Okay, so there are more expenses
Absolutely.
over there, right? You
Right.
know, so in the end, it's very costly to not support the family caregiver.
And it,
And as was the case with my mother, she, thank goodness, was fine, but she needed a little bit of company, supervision, a little
right.
bit of cooking. She never enjoyed cooking and all that stuff. Don't blame her. By this time, she was like in her 80s.
Right.
She deserved some help. My brother and my sister and family were wonderful, but they couldn't be there around the clock.
Yeah.
You know, so she lived alone. So I looked into home care. That was a problem. Not affordable, and they had a minimum of 4 hours.
Yep.
She didn't need 4 hours, she needed one or two. So she went without. So that meant that this and that she had to take care of by herself, and
Right.
she was no longer able to do that. So that's the cost to the person, the patient who needs care goes without as well.
Which is what makes the caregiving industry such a challenge because we are needing it to be able to help supplement our care support for our families. We can't afford it, and the things that we go through in the process, it's almost like we are also putting ourselves in a position that we're going to need the care as well. So then we're also going to need to be in more than just the caregiving industry. Now we're in the healthcare industry, and it's the cyclical thing that eventually we become, instead of the caregiver, we become the care recipient because we've worn ourselves down.
Right, right. Now, um, an ounce of prevention, right, is worth
Right.
a pound of cure. So, and I have to say, I practice what I preach. I don't just give out, advice. And what I do talk about comes either from lessons learned through my experience or others' experiences, or from resources, professionals who really know what they're talking about, and I
Yes.
trust. But to take care of our own body,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Absolutely.
every way is so important now. And I never thought about this. I just figured I've always, knock on wood, been healthy. And so has my family. And even though my dad got cancer, and earlier, 19 years before that, he had this major heart attack. But you know what? They thought it was going to last 2 to 5 years. He lasted 19 because
Oh,
he took care of himself.
such a
Right?
difference.
So it
Such a
was ironic that
difference.
cancer took him, not the heart, which was his big concern. But you know what? He changed his lifestyle immediately. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was scary. We weren't
Yes.
sure if he was going to come out of the surgery alive. So that was definitely scary. So the whole family started eating better. My mother always presented healthy meals.
Right.
That was just the way she always ate. So we learned how to do that years ago, and I still do that. But okay, so I'd rather walk than exercise or dance
Which
or
is good.
anything. But believe it or not, most of my life I exercised 1 hour a day, every day. I was really fit, and then I don't know. I had to think of an excuse to. I didn't realize that once you start exercising, you have to keep exercising to stay fit.
it's it's
That's
a
fair.
it's a life. That's why they call it a lifestyle.
So, but anyway, but as long as I move, and stretch, and all those things, it's better than just sitting,
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
So if we take care of this body that we have, and just really give it a lot of love and respect, I think it's going to last a lot longer, and therefore, whatever help we might need down the road will be hopefully a long way down the road.
Right.
I just saw a video of 90 somethings that were healthy and fit, and
Mm-hmm.
they did a study and they followed them for, I think, 6 years, I think it was. And some did pass away, but others, they were walking and dancing, and they lived
Yes.
to be 100.
It's very
I also
possible.
heard
Very
that,
possible.
yes, and I also heard in that same video, I think it was from 60 Minutes, maybe about 4 years ago, that people born today
Mm-hmm.
are, most people born today are going to live to be 102 or 103.
Yes.
Let's just pray that those are healthy years,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
just because we're living that long doesn't mean we're not living on the assistance of machines or
Right.
medications or,
Yeah.
quality of
Yeah.
life is that. And
Exactly.
that's something that in the multicultural diversity of caregiving that I've noticed different cultures are healthier just because of their habits that they have.
Right. And sadly, I have read that a lot of the Hispanic population is more prone to diabetes.
Yes. Yes.
And, oh, it may have been heart disease, but I can't remember right this second. But there were, that
Yes.
is possibly, I don't know,
It
but
is.
possibly the way they eat.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Absolutely.
not just quantity, but it's also the quality of the food.
Right.
And there might be other groups that where it's not quite uh, that way. Some Asian cultures, I believe, Japanese
Mm-hmm.
diet is uh, mostly fish, and they do eat rice and vegetables. And I have read that they are, in general, a healthier population,
Absolutely.
right? So definitely what you eat is important, and also how much you move, but also this is from the blue zones. Staying social
Yes.
is so important. So that is all different among different cultures. And
Right.
I know Hispanics are very social. We love a good party,
Yes, we do.
and but I think it's hopefully the younger generations are getting used to the more modern ways of taking care of yourself.
Yes.
So move more to sports, walk, and definitely stay social, and feel supported, which goes back to
Right.
caregiving,
Which is
right?
why I love that you created and founded the Caregiving Café. Can you
Thank you.
tell our audience a little bit about that effort?
Yeah, oh, yes, yes. So I love what I do, and it was inspired by seeing my mother without any support while she was taking care of my dad,
Mm.
who from diagnosis to his last breath was 4 months.
Wow.
And I saw what his disease and taking care of dad, who was her Prince Charming,
Mm-hmm.
always has been,
Mm-hmm.
was doing to my mother.
Right.
And also seeing that my brother, my sister, my cousin, that the close relatives that were geographically close, we were all there. And
Right.
even phone calls from far away, talking to mom and dad. Um, so they were wonderful. But my mom had to coordinate everything, and she was a very, very strong, strong person. But even so, I could see she was falling apart just emotionally. It was devastating, and nowhere did she get any kind of support, whether it was emotional or tips or can I help you? I don't think she was even offered a glass of water, quite honestly. She was there the last 2 months, when my dad was bedridden, the last 2 months of his life, she did not leave him.
Mm.
Um, she was always there and she journaled. But seeing that, and then as my dad died in April of 2008, my husband got sick in February that same year. Um, Nobody came to help me either. I didn't know
Right.
what I was getting myself into, and neither did my husband. But we both said we can do this because we're gonna do it, and whatever it takes, we're gonna do it. We're a team. We're gonna do this. So, but it wasn't so easy. We had to figure out everything. So,
Hmm.
out of that need for information, who else is in my shoes?
Right.
Caregiving Cafe was born. I found so many resources. Again, they weren't given to me.
Mhm.
I found about 400 links because I kept them to use later to share. And that's how Caregiving Cafe started. So I
Nice.
shared the information, I built a directory, and I got on Twitter back in 2011, on Facebook, and shared that. And then I started the support groups to do what I wish somebody had done for my mother and for me.
Hmm.
It's just fellowship and information and the resources, and listen, to
Yes.
listen. You know, you do that very well. To
Yes.
listen and figure out from what they're saying, understand where those words are coming from. And those of us who have been caregiving now can understand some of those statements because we've been
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
So we know what those words mean.
We know what they mean, and sometimes what is not spoken. Because
Right.
sometimes you see a lot, the caregivers, especially because you have both virtual support group and in person. And when you see the caregivers coming in, and even though they're discussing their life and how it's evolving, sometimes they don't say some of the other emotions they're not willing to admit to or mention at that time. And but you as a caregiver know, I know what you're not saying. They're
Right.
like
Right.
listening and actually hearing. There is a lot of pain. There's a lot of upset, and there are the smiles that hide some of that.
Right. And I also learned from Dr. Tam Cummings, gerontologist,
Hmm.
a local celebrity
Yes.
gerontologist, that hugs are so important for your nervous system, for your emotions. And the
Yes.
really wonderful thing that she said is that your brain perceives a genuine hug that somebody else is giving you, or when you give yourself your own hug, the brain
Hmm.
perceives it as a legitimate hug. So at Caregiving Cafe, I'm proud to say by the end of our meetings, everybody was hugging each other. And I thought, success.
We all
We didn't
need a
fix
hug.
all the problems, but you know what? They made new friends,
Yeah,
and
which
that
is
was
big.
beautiful. And that just made my day. I mean, a friend of mine told me, Caregiving Cafe is my therapy, and it
Yeah,
truly is.
it's
It's so
very possible.
rewarding. You know, um, Even though we don't have all the answers that day, but we keep chipping away at those problems. And
Yes.
eventually the answers come
Hmm.
and our life
Absolutely.
calms down a little bit or a lot, so to have that sense of peace or even to let those tears out, and sometimes tears of joy and that
Hmm.
laughter that may not come otherwise.
Oh, that laughter is life giving.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So, how do our listeners find Caregiving Cafe, and if they want to join locally or virtually?
Right. Okay. So I have what I call a mini website, which is basically a short list of go-to caregiving resources like Area Agency on Aging and Age of Central Texas. Some of those that are, you can contact them and they can guide you anywhere. So the website is caregivingcafe.com. It also includes an 18-page resource directory. It's
Nice.
categorized in alphabetical order. So you just scroll down. It made sense to me, let's put it that way. But if you scroll down, you find all sorts of services by highly recommended professionals. These are
Nice.
not just Googled and added to my directory. These are actually recommended by families, by family caregivers, or by other professionals who have worked with them.
Perfect.
So that's what you'll find there. You also will find a, a list of locations where we meet in the Austin area. It does need a couple of edits because we're no longer meeting in a couple of places, but we've added 2 others. But that is the way to find me. My contact information is at caregivingcafe.com, but my
Perfect.
email is ccafemail2 at gmail.com. So it's ccafemail2 at gmail.com. Everybody's welcome to join us. Let me just say that this is specifically for the family caregivers, because that allows the family caregivers to speak freely, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
about
They need that.
whatever issues come up without offending anybody.
Right.
We don't want to do that. So that's why it's not for the loved one also. This is just for the caregiver. But
Yes.
I do have resources for caregivers who want to do things with their loved ones or activities for the loved ones so that the family caregiver can take a little break.
Yes.
I have
Respite time.
resources about that as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for putting that together because, like we said earlier, we learn from each other and we are
That's
stronger together.
That's right, for sure. And I do thank you for what you do as well, because you are one of those very strong, proactive caregivers who helps us to keep going. You
Yes.
know, and you also have a lot of resources, and you have this wonderful sense of calm, which is just very relaxing.
Now,
So
I
I'm
didn't have
glad
it in
you
the
share
early
it,
years.
and
I
so
wasn't
like,
like this in the early years.
yeah. So
But thank you for taking the time to share this information and help us spotlight the multicultural diversity in caregiving because, like you said earlier, it tends to be a label. And in that label, it's lost in translation and we create invisible caregivers in the process.
right, yes, and you know how I feel about that term because we are
Yes,
anything but invisible.
exactly.
I think it's important to speak to the different cultures, um, the way that they're comfortable being addressed,
Right.
and the issues that are important to them to get through to them.
Right.
And it's kind of like the flavors of life.
Yes. Yes,
And it's
absolutely.
important to keep them in mind, also out of respect
Right.
for the way they do things.
Right. Right. Because as we learn from each other, we learn new ways to do things. And not
Exactly.
everybody has the right answer and all of that. And it becomes this all inclusive community of caregiving.
Right. Well, I always thought we're people first. End of story.
Right.
We are people. And so let's just be kind and respectful.
Right. That keeps it
And
simple.
warm,
Exactly.
so, and share that good information just to help each other along.
And that's why we're here. That's exactly why we're here, to help each other along. So thank you for joining me today. This will be a wonderful resource for other caregivers to look back and say, I didn't know that. So,
Exactly.
a little
All
bit
right.
every day.
We hope to reach lots of families. And I really appreciate your time. And thank you for inviting me to be in your
Definitely.
caregiver podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lynn. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. I hope this gave you a lot more food for thought. For more information, you can go to proactivecaregiver.com. And until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.